Armenians in Afghanistan. Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. Population 2009 estimate 28,150,000. Capital and largest city Kabul. The Islamic Republic of Afghanistan is a landlocked country in South-Central Asia. It is variously described as being located within Central Asia, South Asia, or the Middle East. It is bordered by Iran in the south and west, Pakistan in the south and east, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan and Tajikistan in the north, and China in the far northeast. There was once a small but important community of Armenians in Afghanistan, centered at Kabul. However, they were expelled in 1897. In 1755, Jesuit missionary Joseph Tyfentler reported that Sultan Ahmad Shah Bahadur took several Armenian gunners from Lahore to Kabul. The Perso-Indian diocese at Julfa sent Armenian priests to the community. However, no Armenian priest came after 1830. Missionary Joseph Balt came to Kabul and preached to them in Persian in 1832. By his account, the community numbered about 23 people. British missionaries were interested in using the Armenian community as a base from which to conduct missionary work in Kabul. However, the community themselves reported that they had only converted one Afghan to Christianity, the robber, who fell 3 times while attempting to break into their church to steal the valuable silver vessels stored therein, and then upon being discovered, begged for mercy and baptism. The Armenian church at Balahisar was destroyed during the Second Anglo-Afghan War by British troops. The community received compensation from the British Foreign and Commonwealth Office for their loss, but the church was never rebuilt. By this time, they had seen no Armenian priest for quite some time. However, the Anglican Church at Peshawar sent a priest to them on one occasion in the late 19th century to baptize them. As late as 1870, British reports showed 18 Armenian Christians remaining in Kabul. One Armenian man named Lucas Ajoza, also known by the name Sir Warden Khan, managed the gunpowder factories at Jalalabad. In 1896, Abdur Rahman Khan, the Mir of Afghanistan, even sent a letter to the Armenian community at Calcutta, India now Kolkata, asking that they send 10 or 12 families to Kabul to relieve the loneliness of their co-ethnics, whose numbers had continued to dwindle. However, despite an initial reply of interest, in the end, none of the Armenians of Calcutta accepted the offer. The following year, the final remnants of the Armenians were expelled to Calcutta after a letter from Ottoman Sultan Abdul Hamid II to the Afghani ruler questioning the loyalty of the Armenians. The Sultan Abd el-Hamid II, Emperor of the Ottomans, 21–20 September 1842, February 10, 1918 was the 34th Sultan of the Ottoman Empire. He is also known in the West as the Red Sultan, Kizil Sultan. Around 1890 the Armenians began demanding the implementation of the reforms which were promised to them at the Berlin Conference. Unrest occurred in 1892 and 1893. At Merzipan and Tokat, Armenian groups staged protests and were met by violence. Sultan Abd el-Hamid did not hesitate to put down these revolts with harsh methods, possibly to show the unshakable power of the monarch, and often used the local Muslims in most cases the curves against the Armenians. According to Turkish scholar Tamer Kayhan, Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany claimed that 80,000 Armenians had been killed, and French reports claimed that 200,000 had been killed. A large number of Armenian gunners were, according to Father Tyfentler, taken from Lahore to Kabul by Ahmad Shah in 1755. It will be interesting to follow their fortunes in their new abode. Christian. The Armenian gunners from Lahore were not, however, the first settlers at Kabul, for according to the traditions which had been handed down to the remnants of the colony which still existed in that city up to the close of the last century, a large number of Armenians had settled there during the reign of Nader Shah 200 years ago. Sir Edward McLaughlin, a great authority on the history of the Jesuit missions in India, says, in his The Jesuits and the Great Mogul, that Benedict goes when passing the borders of this country Catharistan in 1603, had heard accounts of Catharistan which led him to believe that there might be Christians there, and this belief had been reaffirmed in Father Kircher's work, China Illustrata, published in 1667. A few years later the fathers in Moscow learned from some Armenians who had come to Aga from Kabul that the inhabitants of Catharistan who were not Muslim bore a cross-trace swastika on their heads and had probably at one time been fired with the prospect of this new opening for their efforts. The Jesuits of Aga India obtained permission to undertake a mission to Catharistan, and the task was entrusted to Father Gregorio Rois, then at Aga. From the above it appears that there were Armenians at Kabul in 1670, long before the days of Nader Shah or Ahmad Shah. Very little is known of the history of that isolated colony, although Kabul, in common with the other cities in India and the East, was under the ecclesiastical jurisdiction of the extensive Perso-Indian diocese, the headquarters of which was at Jolfat, the Armenian suburb of Isfahan. It appears that up to the 30s of the last century, priests were regularly sent to Kabul from Jolfat, but owing to the apathy of the prelates who succeeded the Archbishop Karapiet, no priests were sent there. Perhaps the spiritual welfare of the small community in the midst of a fanatical people was not considered to be of sufficient importance by the worthy dignitaries who sat on the episcopal chair in the cathedral at Jolfat, with the result that the small flock, which had dwindled down to about 30 families by that time, was left without a shepherd. Their dead being deprived of a Christian burial and their children of the sacrament of baptism, as can be seen presently in the report of the Peshawar Mission, CMS, for 1870-71, there is an appendix, under the captain some account of the Armenian Christians in the city of Kabul, which is reproduced here in extenso, as it is highly interesting. The chaplain, the Rev. G. Piga, baptized 2 of the children, and in 1842 the Rev. J. N. Allen, chaplain to General Knott's force, baptized 3 others. One of them is now a member of our Peshawar Church. Since then 2 young men came to the Peshawar Mission for baptism and have since returned to Kabul. This small Christian community has for many years been permitted by the Kabul government to worship God in their own little church. But they have frequently suffered from the numerous political changes which have taken place in that land of anarchy and bloodshed. Only last year several of them were imprisoned by the Emir and were at last released through the intercession of the missionary at Peshawar. In such a position of uncertainty they have not been able to make much effect towards the spread of Christianity, but on 2 occasions they have sent inquirers to Peshawar, who were afterwards baptized, and whose names are still borne on the books of our Peshawar Mission. It is related by the Armenians that they once baptized a convert from Mohammedanism under the following remarkable circumstances. An Afghan robber, having dug through the roof of the Armenian church, descended and collected all the silver vessels of the place with the ascent through the aperture of the roof of the church. He fell 3 times. Believing that the Almighty had arrested him in the very act of theft, this Afghan robber at once delivered himself up to the Armenians and begged for Christian baptism. Generations maintained a Christian profession amidst Mahometan bigotry and hatred. 1842, October 1st. I went into the town and accompanied by Captain Boswell, 2nd Regiment. Then I set forth to make inquiries respecting a small community of Armenian Christians, of whom I had heard from my friend the Rev. G. Piga, who had baptized 2 of their children when he visited Kabul in 1839, as chaplain to the Bombay Army under Lord King. After some inquiry, we discovered them in the street in the Bala Hizar, leading from Jalalabad Gate. Their buildings were on the north side of the street. We went up an alley and turned into a small court on the left, surrounded by buildings and filled with the implements of their trade. The little door led from this court into their church, the small dark building, but procuring lights, I found it was carpeted and kept clean, apparently with great care.